But also saw LeBron said he's no longer going to demand the team he signs with to draft his son. So,
and I'm not going to crush a gallon of ice cream after I fucking leave this fucking pod.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues Basketball Series, another episode. I'm going to recap what was a lackluster NBA Finals, in my opinion. Pro, I'm not sure how you feel about it, but 4-1, pretty easy run of the mill for Boston. But we'll get into that shortly. Pro, what's news?
Not much, Bogues. Just the circus came to an end, so I got a little void right now. I got nothing to do.
No basketball.
EuroLeague,
no basketball. No NBL. No nothing. You're going to Greece though.
Going to Greece, brother. Leave in a few days. So
Malaka.
Yeah, do some clinics out there. And those guys are always good. They're always they treat me good. Gonna go work out some pro guys, and they had some camp in a town called Utraki. So that'll be. I've been there before. Great, good food, good scenery, good people.
On the water.
So it's what's up?
On the water?
Yeah, right on the water. Like they put me up at a resort. It's literally right on the water, and 2 sessions a day, and then. Yeah, just right on the water. Then we go to Athens. I got to do a coach's clinic out there and work out some pro guys and then come home. So looking forward to that.
Sounds good. Enjoy. All right, let's get into the finals that just were, as I said, 4-1 for Boston. It was pretty routine, man. 107-89 in game 1, 105-98 in game 2. 106-99, and you had that anomaly, that absolute blowout. I think Boston didn't really show up. They got trampled early and just put the cue in the rack, I think, and just saved their legs for the next game. And then 106-88, even the 105-98 and the 106-99. To me, watching those games, it felt like they were never in the game. Like it felt like, it just there was no life. There was no life in the Dallas Mavericks. Luka obviously put up big numbers. 29, just under 30 a night with 9 rebounds and 5.6 assists. But, there's some stuff spoken about his defensive effort, which we can get into shortly. But, I guess the thing is for me, Pro, was Boston just that good? Was Dallas that poor? Or was it somewhere in between?
It's hard to say, Bogues. I mean, Boston is unbelievably put together. They didn't have a great series. They probably played their best game in the last game. I mean, they never really shot the heck out of it. They, and we'll go into some of the Luka defensive stuff, but Boston capitalizing on that is a little bit overrated actually. With how bad the defense looked on Luka's part compared to what they actually did when he was in defensive rotations and primary defender. But, Boston's just hard to defend, man. I mean, they put 5 guys in the court. They could literally just go to the basket. They could shoot. They play great together. They move the ball. They're not a perfect team. There's a lot of criticism to them, but yeah, Dallas didn't play great, man. Even though the games were close, I would say game 2 was winnable. Game 3 was winnable. Obviously they won game 4 and then game 5 they got blown out. But I mean, they were in all these games. They just couldn't put anything together. But we'll go into it and talk. But yeah, that's sort of my thought on it. I thought that Dallas, those games were winnable. Even the game 1, outside of that 17-point deficit after the first quarter, they played it basically even up to, for the next 3 quarters. It just. They never could turn the corner. It's one of those series where it's like that Miami series last year where they never turned the corner on Denver. It doesn't matter what they did. It just, you knew Denver was going to make a run. And that's just sort of what it felt like.
I don't think Boston shot it well neither. I mean, they were 33.8 from 3, 33.8%. Dallas 31.6. Dallas's numbers are a bit skewed over the series because of that game 4. I think you take that game 4 out of, you look at their team-to-team comparison, it's 101-99 for the 5 games, just because of that 40-point win. So you have to take that out of the window. But I think it could have been much nastier for Dallas if Boston just shot kind of, mid to high 30s like they have the whole season. They shoot the ball so well. There are numerous times, and you heard commentators talking about Missoula telling guys to keep shooting the ball. The numbers are going to eventually go our way. But something that really reared its head in this was the value of the role players that Boston acquired. Now we are calling Holiday a role player, which he's a better version of a role player, but Derek White as well. Even Porzingis came, that game one was just unbelievable. Comes in and just makes some huge plays. The baskets that he made, I think Boston's offense was sputtering a little bit, and he just couldn't miss the 1-5 switch and elbow jumper. What you'd probably consider a bad shot in most analytics departments, a long two contested, just knocking them down, and then contested some shots at the rim. But Derek White and Holiday, I think they're so influential. Everyone talks about Tatum and Brown as their stars. Tatum and Brown can't do what they do without those two guys. So I thought they were big. And on the flip side, I felt like, Dallas, maybe you can argue that there couldn't be much done, but I thought we'd see some lineup changes or something to rattle the cage, from Jason Kidd. Like we didn't really see much. He felt like, I assume he felt like they'll win most of those games. Let's just keep our lineups and rotations the same. He did go to Hardaway Jr. at times, who didn't give him much besides that game 4 blowout scoring run, in the fourth quarter. But I would have liked to have seen just something different, something go uber small for a couple of minutes. I don't know. They tried Kleber at the 5 for a little bit, and it seemed to be okay. But the issue for them was you take Lively and Gafford out, they can't rebound. So, but there was no real adjustments, I thought, that they made that were influential on trying to change momentum or at least change something. Look, sometimes in these series you can make a change that you're down 10 and you make a change and it could get you blown out by 40, or it can get you back in the lead. They didn't attempt that gamble, right? They just try to stay consistent with what they were doing, and it didn't really affect the series.
Well, I think it was the common denominator in this series that cost Dallas is, look, they got outscored by about 12 points a game from the 3-point line. They usually make 14 a game. They made 9.6 over the series. That's a huge deficit that you have to overcome. Boston did a great job taking away the roll. They didn't put 2 on the ball, so that lob was basically taken out of the game 98% of the time. And their role players really didn't come to play. No, I don't want to say that. They didn't produce. Washington, Jones, Green, Kleber, those guys really needed to be efficient shot makers, and all of them finished basically below what they do during the season. And, look at a great series offensively. 29, 9, and 6. Kyrie really didn't show up until game 3. Really had a bad first couple of games. Actually didn't show up till about game 4. Really didn't have the series that he really needed to. And this isn't personal on any level. It's just sort of what it was. So, their role players, when they take the ball out of Luka's hands, they got to produce shooting the ball. PJ Washington shoots 41%, 27 from 3. Jones shoots 43, 25 from the 3. Kleber shoots 17% from the 3. And historically bad free throw shooting throughout the series. 68% from the line, which no one shot under 70% since the 2015 Golden State Warriors shot 69, and no one shot less since the 2007 San Antonio Spurs over the course of the finals, and they won, and they shot at like 68%. So, look, we could talk about the look at defensive stuff, but those role players really needed to do more offensively, as far as when the ball gets swung out. And you're right, like lineup stuff, they could have done a little bit different. Maybe Kleber at 5, if they were taking away, they're taking away the lob, possibly. But, Lively was I thought he was outmatched a little bit, psychologically. First final at all, sometimes like the physicality, I think it just sort of confused him a little bit. At times, and they just couldn't make plays. But the free throw shooting was bad. The 3-point shooting was bad. The role players really not given as much offensively as they should have. I thought that those were issues. And then not to take away anything Boston did, man. Boston, look, they didn't shoot the ball great like we said, but they're just tough. They throw all sorts of lineups at you. They just keep moving the ball. They keep attacking you. Tatum was good. White was good. Like you said, the role players of, White and Horford and even Pritchard at times, Derek White, like those guys in Holiday, they just keep coming at you and they keep attacking. And Dallas really, really couldn't put anything together. I think Dallas's shot selection, was tough. I mean, the lack of shot making and then the tough shots that they consistently made. I thought when Luka attacked the basket, when those guys attacked the rim, they were tough to stop. They were probably shooting the mid 60s at the rim at times. And I think they got away from that. They settled for threes. And I think this Boston sort of took advantage.
Yeah, and it goes something to be said about high usage guys. Now, Luka's an absolute gun and put up massive numbers, but I feel like teams that go generally deep into a playoff run and win a final series, you got to have a bit more balance. And I think we saw that with Boston. I think it's a hard style of game. Look, Luka led him through the whole Western Conference. So on his back, basically got him through. Kyrie helped a little bit from time to time, but without Luka, they wouldn't be in the finals. But you get in a final series like this, he's shooting 25 shots a night. His usage, I don't know what the number would be pro, but I'm guessing it's above, 60, 70%, 50, 60% of the game is Luka or usage in his hands. I think it's a hard thing for guys like PJ Washington, Gafford, Jones Jr., Lively, Green. You don't know whether you're going to take a shot for a whole quarter. And it's a tough way to play. And I think in a final series, in a well-coached final series, the other team's going to make those guys have to shoot 2 or 3 straight possessions because that's the way it's going to rotate out of their defense, or they're going to get the ball out of Luka's hands. And I felt like, Luka makes a lot of tough shots, takes a lot of tough shots. Because he uses the ball so much, I just feel like he doesn't, his teammates don't get in as well of a flow, at least in this series. Early on in the playoffs, they did because he was doing everything. But whereas Boston, they genuinely move the ball more. Their highest shot taker was Tatum with 19 a night, then 16. But you look at even guys like Derek White and Porzingis are taking 10, 11 shots a game. Hauser's taking 6 shots a game, 5.4 shots a game. So I think you're getting a better flow that if there is an adjustment, Tatum gets hot, let's say Luka Doncic gets hot, you get out of his hands, you're throwing it to a guy that's at least felt involved. And that's where, being part of the Golden State Warriors and talking about that time where Steph really started to understand at one point in his career that getting teammates involved, especially early in games and throughout games, it's going to have a huge benefit for you late in games if they double and get the ball out of your hands and make other guys beat you because they got the confidence to do it. And we saw that. You see some of the shots that Derek White took, some of the threes that, some role players and other teams might get in trouble for taking because they want to get it back to their superstar late in games. They were confident in just shooting the ball. Whereas with Dallas, it kind of felt like, Luka doubled, kicks it out to Josh Green or to PJ Washington. They kind of would hesitate to shoot that open one because like, shit, I need to get it back to Luka or Kyrie. It just continuously felt that way.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's interesting. I just felt as though when those guys had opportunities to make plays, they just didn't.
Who's that, the role players?
Look, but
I think
Washington,
it's the hesitancy, bro. Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I think like sometimes Luka would create that double, right, and finally get it out to one of those guys. There'd be a hesitancy. I don't know whether it was the moment or whatever, but it felt like because they weren't in a nice rhythm in the game of being involved for maybe a quarter or didn't get, probably only they've been 0 for 2 for 2 quarters, they would hesitate on taking that open one that they should take straight away, and then they would just dribble a hand off back to Luka. It's just like, that is kind of my point. It just was ugly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not there. I'm not in the building, so I don't really have an idea as far as like what their feeling is, what they need to be doing. Like, do I need to get it back or hesitancy? I just, look, I think most players in the game want a bigger role, expect a bigger role. They envision themselves in a bigger role. That's what makes them good. And when you're on the platform like this, and look, if you deal with a guard or a player that's high usage and you only get scraps or you get it in a regular flow, you have to produce. And it's a tough thing and it's not fair, but like there was a lot of times that PJ Washington and Jones would hit the side of the backboard when he shoots a three or airballs it, or like this is a moment. It's a tough moment because not most of these guys have never been in that moment before, and I just thought that look, they played so well all year. Since the trade deadline, especially since that time, those guys were so effective. And even though PJ Washington was up and down, he had a good playoff, especially in the second round, he played well. And yeah, it's tough. Look, it's tough. And I think that players, as they mature, like you said with Steph, like as you go through, especially if you're a great player that wants to figure out winning. Some players don't want to figure out winning. I think Luka obviously does. And I think that, look, going through his first finals in this atmosphere and at the NBA level, I think this is good just to sort of say, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, let's go forward. But again, but if you're a role player, even Kyrie shooting 28% from three, and it was very marginally successful or effective throughout the series. You got to step up in this moment, and it's nothing personal, but that's what people see at the biggest stage. Sometimes they forget what you do in the first 82 and then the first three series to get here. But you got to be able to step up and be productive and be effective. If in the series, you're not going to get the ball as much as you did in the series before, you have to adapt because nobody cares. If you can't do it, they'll find someone else who can. But yeah, I thought, the one thing I thought, Bogues, like the first three games, they were saying how historically bad Luka's defense was. And to the eye, it did look bad. A lot of blow-bys, the energy sometimes, was probably trying to save that for the offensive end. But the number, I actually looked at every possession because I wanted to see how bad it was, because it felt like at points per possession, it probably felt like it was like 1-7 or 1-8 he was giving up. Like literally, you thought, oh, he got scored on all these times. Then I went back to every possession where he was a primary defender. He was the switch on defender. He was the help guy that actually could make a play on the ball, good or bad. And the number was mostly under 1 for the series, which is a decent number. Game 3 was bad, 1.1. Even game 5, which you thought he was getting beat all the time, was only a 0.98, but he was 0.91 for the series, which is a decent number. Game 4, he was 0.5, which is an unbelievable number. But it's not like he played good defense. That number reflects. I think it more reflects that Boston not taking advantage of a lot of times in the blow by, forcing a double, kicking out to an open player, lob at the rim, what have you. But that, when people are saying, well, it's historically bad. Well, it's maybe historically bad on the look, but the actual production and the number you got out of that wasn't as much as I would think. I would have thought it was like I said, 1.4, 1.5, but it was like 0.91, which is, anything over 1 is good offense, bad defense. And then as you go down lower, probably in the 0.9s and 0.8s, decent numbers. But it was interesting how they didn't take advantage of that. And like we said, they just didn't have a great series, even though they, won pretty decisively.
I think there was the clips floating around that we both saw. There were some effort stuff. Now, the numbers can sometimes be deceiving, but I think that Luka does need to improve a little bit with the effort stuff. He does get frustrated at times at the offensive end if he doesn't get a call, doesn't run back. I just don't think you can do that in the finals. I think those 1% possessions, 1%ers can affect the game in a final series. And I think that, that's probably the only knock you can have on his game. Everything else, I mean, the guy's numbers were outrageous, even throughout the playoffs, which we'll get to later in the stats series. I mean, he's put up historical numbers over the course of the playoffs, and people are going to nitpick, and they're the last two teams left in basketball, and there's going to be one loser, so you're going to go after the team that loses. But I think, he does get a lot of steals, which he does gamble a lot and put himself out of position at times. But it's interesting to hear those numbers, Pro, because you would have thought it was way worse. But I think there is a level of improvement that is needed. I think it's just as simple as,
sure,
doesn't get a call, just sprint back and get in position and just be in that position, in a good position defensively. If you do get burnt, don't stop on the play. There are numerous clips where he did that. And I circle back to Steph. Steph was a guy early in his career that kind of had that knock on the defensive end about not not being engaged, not so much engaged, but not being physical, would get bumped out of plays, second effort.
Yeah.
What did he do? He went and worked in the weight room and got just to a competent level. He was never an all-league defender, but new defensive schemes, bought in, didn't quit on plays, and that's probably Luka just needs to go from like just a little bit, below average just to average in a series like that, and maybe he gets an extra game, I think, and just having that extra effort from your leader, I think makes a huge, huge difference. And he showed that. I think he showed it in it's the second and third round. He showed numerous times where he was engaged defensively and locked in. I just don't think he was as engaged defensively, regardless of those numbers, Pro, with those clips. And it's a small nitpick thing, but I think that's something that he'll definitely need to improve. It's tough to do, Pro. It's tough to play, 38-6, and then have to go down the other end and be somewhat a live body and save you, not be able to save your legs for the offensive end.
Yeah, I think, guys, you look at Steph. Even today, I went to look back just to compare. I think it was like 2016 championship, maybe game. I want to say like game 4, game 5. No, game 6 maybe in Cleveland, and just. I read an article a few years back from the Ringer, talking about how historically how he got targeted. How offensive teams would just target him, get to the switch. A lot of stuff that you were talking about, like where they're talking about Luka. Boston would just keep on running pick and roll until he was in it, until he had to guard the ball, and that's the numbers that were staggering as far as how they did it to Steph in that article, and then watching it. Watching LeBron get it, they switched off, then they would just run him back into pick and roll until he switched on, and then attack him. Like you said, bump him off the spot, a lot of back downs and things. You look at Steph, you look at Nash, guys like that. Even if you want to look at Larry Bird, and I know it's different, the game was different back then, how it was easy to hide guys, but you learn how to be a better team defender, like you said, get in the weight room, strength and conditioning, and all that will improve. Like I said, there are players that don't really care ever. They want to score 40 a game. They want to score 35. They just want to get their offense, and the defense they'll never care about. I think that, Luka's the type, like Steph was like that. Nash was like that. They're addicted to wanting to win and compete. And I think that, I think if it's meaningful to him, which I think it is, you'll see some improvement. Like you said, he doesn't have to be all league, just, more energy towards that part, more engagement. And game 5, he was super engaged. The numbers supported that. I think the film in your eyes supported that. And then, also looked like he was hurting too. That last game, like the injury stuff that happened with the knee and things in the first series or two, you saw it in all 3 series. And then maybe the first game you saw it, then you didn't see it. And then it looked like he was in pain and he was hurting, and it just wasn't a good night. But yeah,
he was questionable for a couple of those games. They had him was questionable. I think game 2, wasn't it? He ran out in warm-ups with
got hit in the chest, right?
He got a heat pack on his chest and his knee, I think, in warm-ups. Yeah. And that's you get to that point of the season, no one's healthy, right? Everyone's banged up. Luka was definitely banged up, but historical numbers nonetheless, and just a small improvement for him. I mean, the questions are going to be, can Dallas make that run again next season, Pro? I mean, what was supposed to be a really tough West, they somewhat coasted through. They didn't really have any trouble in any series in the Western Conference, which was interesting. And no one had them picked for the finals, so they definitely overachieved. The question's going to be, how can they improve their roster and get that final piece of the carrot? Or is it as simple as saying, we got there with this roster, we've got a lot of young pieces, we like what we have, we don't need to add any more, let's just get one more year of being together and experience, and then maybe we win it the next season? Or do you think they make some tweaks to that roster? Because I think Boston, the whole thing with, so Derek White's number's $31 million. Is that what I read?
Yeah, that's the number that's been thrown out there.
That's what they have to pay him to keep him
annually. Yeah,
and they're saying that they weren't. There's someone on record saying they're going to do it.
Yeah,
the owner or someone.
Yeah.
So they're going to, but if they keep that squad together, Pro, I don't really see many teams beating them. I think Indiana probably had the best chance, even though it was a 4-0. They really shot themselves in the foot 2 games and probably could have won even a third. But and Indiana do have cap space. New York but I think Boston's got a chance to run juggernaut for the next decade. But do you see Dallas making any changes, bro?
Look, I think the way Boston's built, there's only a few teams in the league that are built like that as far as the lineups that could really isolate the role in the lob for those guys with Gafford and Lively. I think that's what sort of got him there. I think, to me, you have to upgrade. You have to upgrade the Washington position, the Jones position. You got to be a little bit more offensive. But I'll tell you what they do on the defensive end, it's tough to replicate as well. Washington and Jones being a really good defender, could switch on to guys. But not many teams are built to stop the way they play either. Like, if Kyrie and Luka are going to give you the production they did this year, and then the role players did what they do, I think it's going to be a really good, they could just continue to have this roster and build, going forward. I think Jones is the only guy that's really unsigned. So, his number will be relatively low. He could probably get more money somewhere else, but I would say Dallas could sign him for like $9 million, $10 million, maybe a little bit more than that, especially as the money goes up. But you don't have to go nuts to sign him, because I think he really fits there pretty well. But I don't know. There's really not a lot you can do. You got those two guys making a lot of money. You have your other guys signed. I don't know if they could probably make a couple of small moves.
Hardaway Jr. is expiring. He's got 1 year left, right? So he's expiring after next season. Maybe that's a guy they'd love to move, free some cap space up and get something back for, maybe.
That's what I thought. And Malik Monk is an interesting free agent this offseason. Like, if you can move Hardaway, free up some cap space, sign a guy like Monk, who's been the best bench player the last 2 seasons. Like,
he'll be a big number though, won't he?
Yeah, but you're already paying Hardaway that type of money.
Yeah, but I assume Monk will be in the 20s pro, right?
I would say it's hard to say, especially with that number going up, Bogues. That new TV deal is going to bring these deals, he's going to bring all the money up. It's going to bring everything going, it's going to move the cap, pretty much higher. Then you got all your exceptions, they're going to go higher. So your max will go higher. So yeah, I mean, he could probably demand mid-20s, I would think, but you never really know, especially what the market's going to be. But with Hardaway, the only thing is, if I'm a team, I'm probably going to ask for at least a pick, if not multiple, to take him off your hands. Do you really want to do that if you're another team? Is he worth that? Or can you sign other guys, for the, mid-level or lower, that does what Tim Hardaway does? I agree. There is a small move to be made. It'll be interesting, because I still think there's an outside chance of getting LeBron James. The problem is
in Dallas.
Well, we talked about it before. The only problem is, for him to go, you have to get a significantly lower number. But if you're LeBron, right? If you're LeBron, why wouldn't you want to do it? I'm not saying he will. He'll 99.9% going back to LA. But like, if you're in Dallas, they draft the son whenever they draft him, right? They draft him and he's there. And now you don't have to be the guy every night, but he can't take that. But imagine him with that lineup, takes the mid-level exception or whatever to go. His ego would never allow it. But I'm just saying, like, that's a out of left field move you can make, obviously. But there's really not a lot they can do. I would say, look, let's run it back. The problem is, Bogues, I think with this, how Jones is wired, how Washington's wired, that in a big moment like this, it's going to be really hard for them to get you through playoff series 1, 2, and 3, and then have enough for the finals to really step up on that stage. I thought that Washington could have been that Trevor Ariza for the Lakers back in 2009, when he was like streaky shooter, shooting 26% from 3, and he came in and really helped them win that that championship against Orlando, making shots and just sort of stepping up for the moment. I just don't see Washington as that consistent player. Jones, I don't know if he could be that consistent player. And those guys are going to have to be better for them if they want to make this run. Look, the West is stacked. You get Oklahoma City's going to be better. We'll talk about that trade they just made, obviously, later. But like, you got OKC, you got Minnesota. The Clippers are going to reload. It's you just get those 3 alone, and then you've got the other teams just sort of lurking around. I think it's going to be hard for them. But the way they play with that, with Lively, Gafford and Lively, and then you got Luka, Kyrie. And if they can improve their shot making, I think that that's a big thing they're going to have to do. They're going to have to get more consistent shot makers to surround Luka and Kyrie with, because you need guys who can make shots and spread you out. And I think that that's the only thing that they can't really do right now consistently.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just what they do. I think there is a deal to be made. Josh Green, his money kicks in. He's on 12, 13 a year as well, don't forget. So he's going up. Yeah, they got to do. It just seems like they're missing just something small just to get them over the edge. I'm not sold that they get back there. I mean, they could easily bounce out with a tough matchup in the West. But yeah, I think there's definitely a deal to be made there, and it's just going to be interesting to see what that is and what it looks like. Do you need a Lively and a Gafford? Do you need both those guys? Who knows? Maybe a space 5, maybe a Porzingis type pro would be decent on that roster.
Yeah.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Too soon. Interesting the way that all worked out. But I mean, they could definitely use a shooting 5. They could definitely help with some of their offensive spacing at times, because it felt like there was a lot of shit in the paint. Whenever Luka would get by his man and get 2 feet in the paint, which is a shot that he likes, but it would be that spin, long 10-foot fadeaway because the paint had so much shit in it, right? So, you get a shooting 5 where they had Kleber at times at the 5. It did space the floor a bit more for Luka to be able to get in the paint, Kyrie would be able to get in the paint and get on the rim. Whereas when you got a Gafford and a Lively in there, there's always bigs floating around that paint. And then yes, you do have the lob threat, but it's a bit easier to stop than a 5-out spread at times. So it will be interesting to see how all that goes. But I mean, all in all, bro, I think it was a pretty underwhelming playoffs in general. I don't know how you feel about it, but there was not really many series that you were just on the edge of your seat. 7 games. I mean, obviously the Indiana New York probably was the best one as far as like, okay, which way is this going to go? It's gone 7. Denver, Minnesota, but then it ends up being a blowout in 6, and then you go to 7. Like so. Other than those 2 series, I don't really think there was one where you were like edge of your seat type viewing. They were all pretty kind of just flowed pretty easily towards their result. It wasn't something. I don't know if you feel any different about any other series, but there was none I was jumping out of the edge of my seat, like on the edge, like wanting. It's going 7. Oh my goodness, who's going to win? Didn't really get a feel from very many, and it's been the first time in a while you haven't really had any edge of your seat type NBA playoff series other than, like I said, those 2 that I mentioned, but they were, Game 7 was kind of a shit show for New York and Indiana.
Yeah, there really wasn't. You're absolutely right. I thought the Minnesota Dallas series was decent. The New York Indiana was probably the best one. But there wasn't really a series that you're like, oh yeah, it was great. Clippers injuries, so that didn't really happen. Denver sort of, their deals weren't great. I mean, yeah, it was just an underwhelming. New York had injuries. Clippers had injuries. It's just, Miami didn't have anything. So, Philly, So it was it was very underwhelming. Wanted to see more, obviously, and just didn't really step up to the bill.
Agree. All right, moving on. We will touch on. I just want to touch on who your biggest disappointments were for the NBA regular season from each conference. I'll go first to make it easy on you. Just want to talk about kind of a team or 2 in each conference that you think just were real underwhelming. I think for me it was the Phoenix Suns. I expected a whole lot more out of them. Look, whenever you put a big 3 together, you should be better. You should be better than getting bounced the way they did. They got absolutely annihilated. And look, Minnesota was a good team, but I just thought even their regular season, Phoenix, they never really got a nice run on where they looked together, where it was flowing nicely, where they did have some health issues at times, but they knew what they were getting with Beal making that deal. He hasn't had a healthy season in a long, long time. Kevin Durant was still their best in the regular season with Devin Booker at 27.1 a night. Beal was 3rd with 18.2. Grayson Allen 13.5. Eric Gordon rumored 11 a night, rumored not to be back. Nurkic 10.9. I mean, that center spot's definitely an issue for them. I just don't think he's the right fit for them with that squad. I'd like a more active kind of guy. They can kind of move a little bit better. I think he's a bit too kind of slow and grindy for those big three. But they were just super underwhelming. Like I said, they couldn't put it together. Couldn't get a nice flow. You didn't really know what they were running. It just seemed like big three. We're going to ISO one of you guys to create for us and then swing out of it, and maybe we'll get an open shot for someone else. Maybe we won't. It just seemed like their offense was real clunky, defensively really, really poor. But yeah, I just expected a whole lot more for them. They're locked into this roster, pro, as we've discussed a couple of months ago with the way the cap works and everything. This is kind of it. They can't really make a whole lot of moves. They don't have a lot of cap space to make tweaks to that roster. So this is kind of what they got, and it's going to be interesting to see, how they go from here. Who do they sign as coach again?
Budenholzer.
That's right. So we'll see if he can bring some of that love from Milwaukee there after beating them in the finals, and maybe get them firing again. Hopefully those big three can buy in. But they're my most disappointing team from the West, bro.
Yeah, I mean, definitely underwhelming. The injury issues and some of the, trying to get everything worked out issue after the trade, all those trades and stuff were made, pretty late in this, in the process. But yeah, I mean, you expected more, but, it's funny I think I talked about this before, when they made the trade, not a lot of blowback from a lot of people. They're like, obviously the bench had to be addressed, and there was a lot of talk about that, but it's funny how they turn on you pretty quick when you don't have the results. And, I knew this wasn't going to work, from people who weren't really saying that when they were making those trades. Look, I thought they were going to be better. I think a lot of people did. And you're right, like what to run. But again, throwing a team together like that, it's like a college team with this NIL stuff. Like, they threw it together, it's hard, especially with three guys like that trying to play together and do what you need to do and building on stuff, especially with those injuries.
But I thought the reason why I thought it would work, because Beal's quote unquote a two-way player. I thought that's why it would as a big three it would work, because he'd be like, okay, I don't need as much of the ball as Booker and Durant, and you've got an elite defensive player that doesn't have to carry that load offensively, which should then obviously help his health. That's why I was one of those people that thought, I'm not going to lie, I thought they'll be much better. I thought they'd be at least a conference finalist because of that. But as you said, they threw this team together like Lego pieces. It was just kind of like, three big names, let's put them together. It has to work, and it just goes to show you it doesn't go that easily in the NBA.
No, it doesn't. And you always need safety points where, how are we going to get out of this when you make deals like this? And that's the toughest thing for them, because the only one who's going to bring you real value in trade is going to be Devin Booker. Durant with his age, will give you a little bit, but it's going to be like, you're not really going to move Kevin Durant for anything really good. So, you're not going to, Bradley Beal is going to probably cost you a ton of draft capital to get off. And they basically traded all their draft capital to bring these guys together. So they really don't have a lot of moves they can make except sort of trying to retool the roster the best they can, unless you just want to start over, unless you want to get unless you want to get a bunch of players for Booker and then just try to make it work like that. But he's just too young, and he's too much of a difference maker, in my opinion, just to do that with. So I think you just have to roll with it, see with those three plus Grayson Allen, Nurkic, try to retool the bench a little bit. Koji's good defensively, but he's a zero offensively. Royce O'Neal's sort of up and down. They definitely have to upgrade that. Eubanks didn't give him a lot, gave him a little bit of energy. Eric Gordon was okay at times, but he's getting, his age is gonna hurt him. So I think you just sort of you try to upgrade the bench. I think that owner is really sort of, I think he likes being in the media, but he doesn't want to get walked on with this stuff. And he's been taking a lot of heat, as he should, for the last 6 weeks about this. So I think that you retool the bench, see what happens, try to spend. I think they're in that second apron, so they're not going to have much for the exception stuff. So they can't really sign, make a big signing out of their mid-level exception for like $10 million a year. So I don't know how they're really going to do it. They got to really be, have some imagination out of that, those minimum spots, and maybe make a small deal here and there. But I just don't know what you're going to do. Like Nurkic isn't bad. Like he's giving you like 11 and 11. That's not bad. You could trade him, but what are you going to really get back? Like you got to think, all right, we're just going to trade this guy or trade that guy. But like what you're going to get back may not be worth actually trading that person for, especially if you're trying to compete for a championship. I just don't think it's hard. Like you said before, you said like big threes don't work anymore. And look, I can't disagree with that. It takes so much out of your cap and puts you into these aprons. And unless you have all these young players that you developed, but if you developed all these young players, most likely you'd have to trade those away to get these big time players. So your cabinet's going to be empty when you're looking in the pantry for something. So I think it's going to be tough for him, Bogues. I would just stay status quo for it for at least another year and try to look. This is why you employ more people in the White House in your scouting department. So somebody's got to come up with some good ideas on guys that they could sign that could be either shot makers or defenders, or give them a little bit of upgrade out of the bench. And you got to get lucky with staying healthy. Those guys got to stay healthy, because if one of those three guys go down, you're completely screwed.
Agree. Who you got out west?
All right, so out west, I mean, it's tough for the out west team. Look, it's easy to say Lakers, but what are you going to do? You can't say anybody on the bottom. Memphis injuries, San Antonio, they were terrible anyway. Portland's terrible anyway. I'd probably say Sacramento if I had a team. Mm-hmm. Either New Orleans or Sacramento. New Orleans, you could say, well, at times they played really well. Zion goes down, so there's a reason why they were sort of struggling. I guess New Orleans would be a pick, but I would say Sacramento. Look, they didn't have a ton of injuries they were dealt with. They have a good team. They made a great run last year. That's why it's so tough in the NBA to really like get out of the gate and be really good when people didn't expect you to be good. Then they expect more every year, and that just sort of hasn't happened for them. I just think that, look, you got Fox and Herter and Murray and Sabonis. You got Harrison. You got Trey Lyles isn't bad. You got Monk, Davion Mitchell, but I expected more out of them. I expected more of a run, more fight. It just sort of didn't happen, and I didn't get a lot of intel out of that situation, so I don't know if why didn't certain things didn't work. I was expecting a little. Keegan Murray I thought had a decent second year. Harrison played solid. Sabonis did his thing. Fox was up and down, but still gave you 27 and 6. So. I just expected a little bit more out of them, Bogues. What did you think? Did you think that you were sort of satisfied with where Sac landed, or how do you sort of see them, how they finished out?
Yeah, the West was tough over the regular season, so it's kind of like who are they replacing out of the six? But it just felt like once Monk went, their season went. They just lost that. It just shows you how important he was. And how important those teams that have six-man gunners that come off the bench and score the ball, they can alleviate so many problems. They can be a Band-Aid in so many games where you can have shitty offensive nights, a starter can get hurt, a starter can go 0 for 10, Fox might not have it, and you just got the luxury of bringing a guy like that can drop 25. I think he had a few 40-point games this last season, and then, it's just hard when you lose a guy like that. I think their season, they weren't playing as well as the season before. I felt like they had a chip on their shoulder that season before, even though they lost to Golden State in that playoff series that went 7. I felt like they had a different grunt to them. This season, we finally ticked that playoff box. Sac hadn't been to the playoffs for so long. Maybe they were a bit comfortable with where they were. Where right now we're back to being okay. And as you know, Pro, you can't, especially out west. Even out east now, you can't rest, especially with the way the planes work and everything. You kind of need to play the whole season through, and that's what teams are starting to learn now. Like I think it is. I think we're going to see teams hopefully taking the 6 more serious, trying to get into that 6. I think these teams like Phoenix and a few of these teams kind of like, even if we get in the plane, we'll still be okay. We're that good and that talented. Where I think you don't want to go through that route and then have to lose home court after getting through a plane against some tough, intense games. So I agree. I think Sacramento was the other one I was looking at, actually, them and New Orleans. I think New Orleans, I think they played okay. They had some injuries, but Sacramento was definitely one that I think just felt like they were comfortable, that like they felt like they accomplished something that season before, and that's a sign of a team that hasn't been successful long. So now they need to reestablish themselves to get back in that race in the playoffs consistently, and they should be somewhere in the mix again. As the West grows. Out East, I'm going to go with I had Miami and Atlanta, but I'm going to go with Miami, bro. I think Atlanta had some injuries, and I thought they would be better. I'm not going to lie, I thought they would be better with new coach and all that kind of stuff. But I got to go Miami. Just they get the injury excuse every other year now. This injury issue that they constantly have is that the Miami military regime, pro? I mean, maybe they need to tweak that a little bit, because they continue to they do have some certain guys getting hurt in Hero and Butler as well. I know they do practice like absolute animals, even leading into the playoffs. They run a tight ship down there, as we know. But I think the excuse for the Miami Heat is going to start to we can't keep giving them a pass. They should be better. And this roster's not horrible. Tyler Hero, Butler, Adebayo, all averaging 20. They made the move for Rozier, which arguable. It worked in the regular season. It was okay, but it didn't really help him much post that. Duncan Robinson reestablished himself and found himself back in the rotation. He averaged 13 a night for the regular season, but Caleb Martin wasn't as good as he was the season before. Kevin Love, minutes flailing out. Kyle Lowry, end of his tether. Jovic, probably a younger player that they're pretty high on down there, I believe, that has a chance to be half decent. But yeah, they got to stop getting a pass. I think they should have been a bit more competitive. They have a guy that we all probably think is one of the best coaches in the league. They shouldn't be a team that's constantly down the bottom. I think they probably another team that undervalues the regular season sometimes. That probably needs to value it a little bit more to try and get out of that playing realm. But I was pretty disappointed with them. I thought they would be much better coming off that season before, that run they had to get to the finals with a team that no way in hell should have been there. Just underdog, grindy role players that weren't playing big minutes have come into big minutes. They go to the finals. We were all applauding them. And then, yes, they get Boston in the first round, but they shouldn't have been in that situation anyway. They should have been somewhere in the middle of the mix to try and get Boston later on in the second or third round. So I was disappointed in them, pro.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a down year, obviously, coming from the finals and into doing what they did. Rozier had a pretty good year and a losing effort in Charlotte, and then the trade happens, and it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as like Dinwiddie going from Brooklyn doing really well until going to the Lakers, and he just sort of flailed out for the year. But he was inefficient. I thought it took him a while to get his legs, for them. And, the injury stuff to Butler and Hero, I don't know. I mean, you never hear anything out of Miami as far as intel, so you don't really know why or how or what have you. But, look, there's always moves to be made, and they always explore things. I think Hero is going to be the next guy to move. It's the only real guy that you can get true value for. Some team that can't really win, and they could just give you something off, and you can maybe get something for him. Butler, I don't know what's going to happen with him.
Well, do you read into the Riley comments that we spoke about going after Jimmy and his antics, and you shouldn't be commenting if he's hurt? And then obviously I think Jimmy's come out and said that, he might, there was something a couple of weeks ago around him putting some subtle feelers out there to get out of there.
Yeah. Did you see that? He was on a private jet, and it was like, in the back, like he was on a jet in the background. You saw the map. It was going to San Jose. People really think that like trades happen when you go to the city of an NBA team and you just sort of openly meet, like there's no rule against that, which is pretty funny. But I think that, look, they're ultra competitive. Riley wasn't feeling it. He probably saw what he did, and Riley, he's not gonna back down from anything in the moment, especially. And he's got free reign to do whatever he wants. That owner is sort of, they're attached at the hip. Whatever Riley does goes, and for good reason. I thought he was just probably upset at the time. I don't really read into that much. Hey, look, anything could be done. Look, Butler and Hero, the guys, they're not going to trade Bam. I mean, Rozier, I guess you could move, but, they've got some decent young guys. I would say that if you're going to move anybody, it's probably going to be Butler and or Hero. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're not good enough right now to make that jump in the East with New York getting better. You have Boston there, New York getting better. Paul George possibly can go to Philly, and then that's another scenario that happens. Indiana's getting better. So they're, right now, if you look at the East, so Boston's much better. Milwaukee's going to retool with, they're going to get healthy. Cleveland's still Cleveland, so who are you head and shoulders above, even if you're healthy? Philly had some injury issues. Orlando's knocking at the door. Chicago, Atlanta, Brooklyn, all down in the dumps. Toronto down in the dumps. Charlotte, Washington, Detroit. Now they're going to be below you for the most part. But those teams above them right now at 8, you got Philly, Orlando, Indiana, Cleveland, Milwaukee, New York, Boston. Tell me the weak team out of that where you can just show up and do your thing with. I mean, there's no guarantee. So probably you could stay where you're at. I would say maybe you can get to that 7 or 6, but I mean, it's hard to leapfrog those teams. I think Philly will be much better, if they stay healthy, knock on wood. Orlando's probably going to do something in free agency to upgrade them. Indiana, Indiana's going to stay. They got all their guys back for the most part. They just, signed Siakam. So, long term. So they're going to go forward. Boston's going to do their thing. Now there could be some freak injury stuff, but I think they're going to be a little bit underwhelming. And I think there's probably going to be a move to be made there to try to, reshuffle the deck a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I mean, the grindy team that we know brings it every season. Just shouldn't have got a pass there last season. Who you got at East?
Bogues, that's a tough one, man. I mean, if you look at it like, all right, so, I mean, I could double up and just say Miami, but, Chicago's a team that effort-wise wasn't there, but they had a lot of injuries. So obviously missing Ball, Levine missed most of the season. So it was hard for them. Atlanta had injuries. The other teams were just bad. Brooklyn, Toronto, Charlotte. So I guess I'll go Chicago, but again, it's tough because of injuries, Levine, but Levine's got to step up too. Like Levine's he's never really been on a winning team. And it's not all one player and say, oh, well, he can't win. Sometimes he's just not in situations he can win. Dude, you got yourself, DeMar DeRozan, you got Vucevic. Like, that's enough to win in the East a little bit, to at least get to that 7, 8, 9, 10. They played so poorly in the first half of the year, and then they just sort of turned it around. Ended up winning 39 games on the season, but, they got to do better. Like, Kobe White's a nice little young player. Now, we'll talk about the trade they made, but like, it's just tough, man. I don't see, but they got to step up. They were very underwhelming. Their effort level was in the toilet, and then they just, they figured it out at the end of the year, play hard. Drummond gave them some good stuff. Patrick Williams is just, too inconsistent. He's sort of the PJ Washington of the East. He just doesn't play consistent enough. And, DeRozan does his thing at 24, 5, and 4. And, like I said, Kobe White played well. And off the bench, they didn't really have a lot. Drummond, Ayo, Dosunmu played okay, 12 and 3. But they didn't. Well, actually, he started most of the year, I think, in the absence of Levine, but they just didn't have enough. Caruso, top 5 defender in the league. Obviously he's going to give you a tough every night. Offensively, he's just going to be okay, but he can make shots. And, I just thought that they were underwhelming. Billy Donovan does a really good job. He's a very good coach. But, when you got injuries, it's just tough. And that's why it was tough to really pick a team in the East, because a lot of these teams that we're talking about had major injury issues that really, it's a talent league. The coaching's important, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit overrated with, you're not really going to just out-coach teams because you got a good ATO package, and you gotta have talent to win in the league. And if you're hurt, your top guys are hurt, it's going to be tough to compete.
Trent's making a case for Milwaukee as the other one.
Yeah,
I just feel like in the
you're right.
offseason, that was the matchup, right? Phoenix, Milwaukee, they make the trade for Dame. They pretty much have the same squad. I understand they had injuries, but that hasn't prevented them from getting a top 3 seed previously. And then Doc comes in and they become worse all of a sudden, despite having Giannis and Dame on the court for most of that time. Like, for me, I feel like both Miami and Chicago had a lot of stuff that was out of their control. And if they have guys on the court, it might be different. But I just feel like Milwaukee all year consistently underperformed. And like the first round exit, I just feel like they could have been a lot better.
Yeah, and it wasn't just down to injuries for them, right? No. I mean, they were shitty. After making that coaching change, they were bad as well. So you can't really put it just on the injuries. It's a fair point.
Yeah, I think the injuries you could put it towards the playoff, but during the season, Giannis played 70 plus games, Dame played 70 plus games. Middleton, what did Middleton do? Middleton was at 55, but yeah, they in the Dame trade, they traded away some stuff, right? Like as far as their bench and because their bench was
Grayson
a little weak.
Allen, Grayson Allen got moved to free up some space, right? So
yeah,
and I still think that trade, like I said from the start, they traded offense for defense, elite offense for elite defense, and their defense wasn't great. Dame, made some shots in the playoffs, but do you make that trade all over again? I don't know. I mean, I'd rather a Drew Holiday, in my opinion, with that squad, but they were going for a home run.
And to the East as well. To hand a rival a championship.
Well, he went to Portland first.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. I feel like the Fiji.
I mean, credit to Boston for swooping.
Yeah, 100%.
They see that. Well, they make that deal.
Yeah, and I don't think it's said enough that Brad Stevens made a lot of like Red Auerbach like moves.
Yeah,
Red Auerbach for drafting Bird and all that, but Auerbach turned like 2 marginal first round picks into Parrish and McHale. He turned, he gets Len Bias out of a like BS trade. Like, God rest his soul. He died, obviously he died early into his career, but like some of the moves that Brad Stevens, and we didn't talk about that, in the finals the finals review, but yeah, he made some great trades. I guess if you're really paying attention to it, saying, all right, he's probably going to get either bought out, probably not going to get bought out, but someone else is going to come up with the trade or Portland, and now we're open to that. But yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know. I mean, I agree. Milwaukee really underachieved. Now, through that first part of the year, when they had Adrian Griffin as a coach, their schedule wasn't the hardest of schedules. If you went back, I remember going back and looking at it after the firing, but you bring in a coach, you expect to do better. I get it. They were just sort of underwhelming, and they're just getting older. And they're getting older. They're getting less effective. Giannis getting hurt in the playoffs really hurt them. And, Malik Beasley was, no one else really stepped up like how they supposed to. I would say Bobby Portis made a jump, and he's been getting jumps almost every year, but he was solid. But like no one off the bench really gave them what they really needed. And I just don't know where they're going to, maybe you have a whole off season to sort of get together again and all that. But, they said Dame was going through a divorce or whatever. So I don't know, man. It's maybe bring it back just roll it back and see what you got. You still got a decent team.
Mid-30s now, isn't he? 30s?
Dame's 33.
Yeah.
Giannis is 28. Middleton 32. I
think Brook Lopez is on the block as well, apparently, which is interesting because I think he's been pretty good for him for the most part. But yeah, I mean, they just paid him too. So, but yeah, Milwaukee's a fair one as well. I think they got a pass just because everyone thought of the injuries, but they
we just spoke about them so much this year. I just felt like we'd be doing an injustice if they weren't mentioned.
100%. Yeah, they should have been better. And Doc Rivers, no excuses starting next season. You got your full off season, full slate to rebuild it, and doesn't look like it's going to get that much better. Touching on Josh Giddey, so we'll get into that. Just broke this morning. Josh Giddey for Caruso. Pretty good trade I think for both. I think OKC get a really good role playing backup guard that'll bring some toughness and grit to that bench of theirs. And Giddey goes to a situation where I think he's going to have pretty much the keys to that team for the most part. I mean, obviously Kobe White was coming into his own a little bit late last season. Ball, I mean, this does put the writing on the wall for Ball and whether he comes back and can even get back on the court. But shooting's still going to be a problem for this squad, bro. The reason why Giddey fell out of the lineup was the 3-point shooting. That's going to be the big elephant in the room for them. When you slot him in next to if Ball does play, and then you got DeRozan, not the most scary 3-point shooters in the league. DeRozan started to shoot a bit more of them, but that's been their issue. They've now traded for a non-shooting point guard that's going to need the ball in his hands a lot. But I am interested to see how he goes with the full threshold keys to the team and whether he can help get that team back into a play-in or the playoffs. But I think it's a fair good deal for both teams. The reason why some people might look at it as Giddey's a better player than Caruso on paper, and statistically the salaries match up. He's still on his rookie deal. So, Chicago will get to audition him to see whether they want to extend him long term. They'll have the rights to be able to do that before anyone else, which is a good move for them. They get to see what's going on there, and the OKC shore up their bench for what should hopefully be another, second, third round push, bro.
Yeah, I think that with Giddey inability to make shots consistently, he made some strides, especially in his free throw, but his three was a disaster. You just couldn't play him at the end of games, and plus, he needs the ball. Shea needs the ball. Shea's an MVP candidate. Giddey's still trying to find his way. So, it's easy who you're going to give the ball to. And the lack of shot making, I think, hurts. Obviously, it really hurts. And for Oklahoma City, look, you got so many teams in the West. You got multiple, teams got multiple problems to guard. And I think with Lou Dort already in the lineup, now you get Caruso, who arguably is a top 5 defender in the NBA. So, now you get two stoppers you could put on the floor. You saw in Boston how important it is to have multiple guys that could guard and play defense. So, he's a really tough kid that doesn't really need the ball in his hands.
Great
he
cutter.
Can make open threes.
Really good cutter.
Very good cutter. Very hard-nosed. He's a championship level player that he's sort of like, I wouldn't say Derek White, because obviously Derek White's a much better player, but like, he's a guy that just fits in.
He's a piece you need gritty, for a chip, 100%.
Tough. Yeah, and then he makes $9 million. So, and I think it's partially guaranteed next year, if I'm not mistaken. I think his deal is partial. Let me see.
He's getting all that.
Partially guaranteed.
He's getting all that.
Yeah. Right. What I'm saying though is he's partially guaranteed next year. That's not going to come into effect. But Dort makes like 15, 16, 17. Maybe it's something if he outplays Dort, you could deal Dort, long term or what have you. Right now, they've got a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands, an elite defender. Now you could have 2 elite defenders on the floor at once, in certain lineup situations. I would say that probably Caruso will come off the bench, and just be that guy coming off the bench. He gives you energy, and then you could play him long minutes and stretches. But, with Giddey, look, you got to get the shot right. Now, Peter Patton is a shooting coach that is in Chicago that worked under Chip England. Chip made some strides with him without question. And I think that, Patton's probably one of the top 4 or 5 shooting coaches in the league. So, he's got time to develop. They need to do something because that roster is going nowhere fast. I just don't think there's really anywhere to go. You make this deal because you get this, this player who's an elite passer who can make plays, got good size, just can't shoot the ball. So, you got Ball who arguably may never play again. So you need something, put Giddey. It would be interesting how you do lineup stuff. Maybe they're going to try to trade Levine, but like if Levine stays, you're going to have, you're going to play DeRozan at the 4 because you'll have Giddey. You got to start Kobe White. Kobe White's too good to bring off the bench. So you're going to have Kobe White, you're going to have, DeRozan, you're going to have Levine.
And Giddey.
With Giddey, it's going to be tough. I don't know what you'll do. That's not my problem, but they got to make a move because right now they're circling the drain. They don't really have, Kobe White's a good player, but they don't really have this elite young guy that they're waiting on. Vucevic is good, solid. You got pieces you could move if you want. You could roll it with this team. The one good thing about him is you can get fucking Levine off the ball. You can get Levine shots now. I think Levine needs to be set up. I don't think he's a guy that you just give to and get out of the way. I don't think his basketball IQ's high enough. I don't think his shot selection's high enough. I think you need a guy who's going to just Jason Kidd him, just basically get him the ball where he needs it, when he needs it, and then just like set it up where it's either a catch and shoot, a straight line drive, getting out in transition. But I think it's a good move for Chicago. Like you said, it's a good move for both teams. It gives Oklahoma City a guy that's an elite defender, a guy that doesn't need the ball, who can make an open shot, that gritty championship level player. They need to make a jump. They really can't do much because of the salary situation. I don't think they could do much in free agency. So making a move like this to upgrade your defense, upgrade your toughness, upgrade your age, and just sort of experience is going to be good for him.
And it holds guys accountable on that OKC roster that are younger guards. Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, even Wallace, who are coming to their own a little bit. You mess around, your minutes aren't a given. And Caruso's a guy that's notorious for coaches love. If you're a young guy that's super talented, might be more talented than Caruso, you want to mess around and not come and bring the energy and effort that we need. You put Caruso in there and give him the 20 minutes. So it's a great insurance policy to have. So I like that deal for both. Looking forward to seeing Josh Giddey in the next month or so with the Boomer stuff as well. NBA Finals lowest viewership since 2007, pro, down 12% from last season. Doesn't fucking matter because that TV deal just keeps going up.
Bogues, I don't want to hear Bogues. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to fucking hear. I don't want to hear.
Tell
no
Strauss.
One's watching the NBA
Tell
anymore.
Strauss.
Yeah, tell Strauss. Yeah, no doubt. I don't give a fuck that no one watches it. I don't give a fuck that viewership's down. I don't give a fuck about all this stuff because
crazy.
that contract is fucking insanity. And hey, good for the NBA. Everybody's getting paid off the thing, but everyone just keeps saying doom and gloom for the NBA, ratings, da-da-da-da-da, and this deal keeps on getting up. Nobody says, wait a minute, why we're spending what for this? For what? Fuck that. They know something because that deal continues to go up. And so I don't give a fuck about viewership. I don't give a fuck if 10 people watch it. They are getting paid off these TV deals. So.
Live sport. Advertisers need live sport. I'm a firm believer in that's the reasoning.
Yeah.
You need. It's the only forum where you cannot skip through commercials if you're watching sport, live sport. Right? If you're watching Netflix or any other shit, you can skip through stuff. You can fast forward through stuff. Live advertisers that want you to look at their ad, you got to watch it during live sport because you can't fast forward the shit. I think that's a huge reason why we're seeing. Even in Australia with the AFL, the NRL, the NBL, NBA, live sports key because it's the last beacon of not being able to fast forward ads. It's not commercial TV anymore where you have to watch the movie of the night and sit through all those bullshit ads. You don't have to do that anymore. Netflix, Disney, all these apps. Although the NBA app's starting to get sneaky, bro. They're starting to put ads on their NBA app too. I don't know if you get them over there.
Oh fuck yeah! You got to watch 30 seconds before you get on.
Yeah, what is
and
this
if
shit?
you're flipping game to game, you got to watch that shit.
Yeah. So
all I'm saying, Bogues, all I'm saying for this fucking NBA app is wherever you're at. Now you don't deal with it because you're not United States. You should be able to watch local fucking games. Just charge me $30 more for the app and make my $30 go towards the team.
Locally
team for the year. Double it. I don't care, but I don't want to have to
Bro,
if I'm
give you a tip, mate.
out.
There's these things called VPNs. You pay for a VPN.
I know. I get the VPN deal.
Couple of $100 a year, and you got a VPN. Then you can look at all kinds of different naughty things from overseas as well, bro.
Hey, Bogues, don't start that shit, would you please? That bullshit.
But I use it for
you
poker.
in trouble,
I use it for online poker. I play for free fake money. That would be if the government's listening. Fake money. But
nice.
If you wanted to play online poker from Australia where it is illegal, you just simply get a VPN and then it works. Allegedly. To finish off free agency, Siakam re-signs for the max deal. No surprise there, $190 million, 4-year contract. Great stuff for Indiana. That's hardly a shock to anyone there. What else do we have here? Where do you think Klay ends up, bro? You think he leaves?
Oh, man. Yeah,
You saw the drama,
yeah, I
right?
think
He unfollowed the Warriors account and all that bullshit.
Yeah, but I don't believe any of that shit. I don't like if I'm Golden State, right? Look, you're paying out the ass now anyway, right? All these fucking franchises are valued at ridiculous money. All these guys are ridiculously rich. So what? You get pounded a little bit. Look, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get rid of Klay. You're not gonna be able to use that money anyway because you're so far over the cap. Like, I would just run it back. I think he's gonna stay, but look, Orlando's gonna make a push. Um, it'll be interesting to see how Indiana does this because I think there's a way to like wait on re-signing your guy and use cap space, and then all your cap space will be taken up by re-signing your guy. So like there's an opening. I don't think they will because they got all these young guys under rookie deals. Why bring in Klay? But I think he stays, Bogues. I just think, look, you're not going to get much better. And what are you going to do? You're going to start like re-signing, you're not going to sign him. You're going to trade 19 draft picks to get Draymond Green's contract off your roster and just keep fucking Steph and a bunch of young guys. Like, I think they're gonna keep them together. If I had to guess, what do you think?
I don't know. Clay's not a guy that usually gets into the anticsy stuff of unfollowing and all that shit, which is interesting. That's why I found it interesting because he's usually just on his boat with his dog.
He removed photos too from the 22 championship. Deleted photos off his Instagram from of him and Steph sitting in the locker room with the championship.
Yeah, so I don't know. It sounds petty, but these things happen when things come to an end. It does never ends in a honeymoon period. There are some teams that could use him though. Dallas is one. Can you flip? Somehow get a Hardaway and a pick and something else.
OKC.
OKC is probably into. They're gonna have to keep some cap space, right, for the Wallace and a few other.
The teams that
Orlando is the other one.
Trent, who they saying?
Well, everything I've seen is like Indiana.
Indiana have some cap space.
Orlando and OKC, and then there was one other one, but
Indiana would be.
They sound like flies.
I think remember we talked about that before, Bogues.
Yeah, man.
I think Indiana would be great for
just
him.
that tempo offense, 140 a night with Klay on a wing.
And then you got Halliburton, who find anybody.
That would be an unbelievable spot for Klay to land, and he would be. You just got to feet set. Don't dribble. Just shoot it. Just run the wing and shoot.
Well, talk about social media stuff. Bronny just retweeted a picture of his dad playing for the Mavericks with him in the lineup with the Mavericks jerseys.
Did he? Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
But also saw LeBron said he's no longer going to demand the team he signs with to draft his son. So
sure,
found that interesting.
And I'm not going to crush a gallon of ice cream after I fucking leave this fucking pod.
But yeah, the free agency will start and get pretty crazy in the next couple of weeks. All right, it's a few coaching things. Redick finally confirmed to the Lakers, $32 million, 4 years. Great for the podcast, great content because this I think is will end poorly. It seems like JJ's a very listening to a few of his podcasts from over the last couple of years, not the LeBron one, but the other ones. Just mentioning certain things, I noticed that he mentioned something like that he was really about every little detail on things, and as far as he mentioned something which I found interesting when he'd get in a cold tub. If it was a 3-minute cold tub that he had to do, he would set the timer for 3 minutes 30 seconds because it took him, it'd take him 20 seconds to walk to the tub and get in. Those kind of minute details are great for a coach, but they can actually hurt you in the NBA, pro, as you know. When you start getting really super detail-orientated in the NBA, as a first-time head coach especially, with a guy like LeBron and all those kind of things, I think that can really help him or really hurt him surviving long-term because, as we know, there's a lot of players that don't want to hear that shit. They don't want to hear every little detail. It's just like, let me get in my bag, let me play kind of attitude. So I did find that interesting, and it was a random thing to bring up, but, interested to see how that all goes with the Lakers. Pro, Monty Williams' agent, can you hire him for yourself?
Bogues, that's some amazing shit right there. Waking up to that this morning.
It's just absolute. Look, that one I got right. When they signed him, I was like, what the fuck? Because he's notoriously a disciplinarian coach, no nonsense. I'm gonna, this is how we fucking do things here to play. and you've got a young team that's helter-skelter, I just didn't think it was going to work. I just didn't, and they're rebuilding, so there's no accountability. So, man, 78.5 million for 6 years. For those not aware, fired after his first year, and now they're on the hook for 60-odd million over the next 5 years to pay Monty Williams to not coach their team.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, going back to the JJ thing, look, I think he's a good coach. I think he'll be a good coach. The problem is you're at a place where unrealistic expectations, aging superstar. You got AD, who last year wasn't hurt, but he's been hurt almost every year. So, like, the roster just isn't good. I'm not saying they did a bad job with the roster. That roster won them a championship minus a few guys, but they just can't do anything with the roster. So you got a really good West. You're really not going to be able to do anything. I don't care how smart you are or how good your HEO package is. If you don't have talent, you're not going to win. You've got enough talent to get you middle of the pack, and you don't have enough talent to win you a championship. And the Lakers are going to stand by you. Are they going to be like, wait a minute, well, LeBron's on his last deal. I don't really care anymore. Let him play it out, and then JJ's our coach going forward. Look, I think JJ could be a good coach. I mean, you can't tell me that he's any better or any worse than Steve Kerr when he got the Golden State job. I mean, both have no experience. You know, like he was in a front office with the Phoenix Suns, but I would think that Steve Kerr's a little bit more like a people person. You know, I think that would help him personality wise. JJ's more like tunnel vision with stuff. And I'm just gonna say I don't know how fun it's gonna be to coach LeBron in January when you like 4 games over 500 or 6 games over 500 and you're struggling. I think that's gonna be tough. They know that you're his guy through the podcast. Is that going to affect you in the locker room? Not that it really cares or matters, but there's going to be some things. Now, the Monty Williams thing, it's misappropriation of funds. It really is. Like, you're looking at it,
money laundering.
Yeah, I mean, 80 plus million, and you fire him after 1 year. I mean, look, we're not there, so Monty could have been a complete disaster or not. I don't know, but like, you don't fire a guy 1 year, into a deal like that. That's a monumental deal. To be honest, I think the NBA needs coaches like that. Well, we talked, we didn't really get into the Danny Hurley thing. We missed that. But like Danny Hurley, like guys like that should be coached in the NBA. Disciplinarians to a degree, coaches everybody the same to a certain degree, detail oriented, wants to do things right. The problem is NBA players on the majority don't want to be coached like that. So that's a problem. But you got guys like Spoelstra, who's good, coaching that way. You got Tom Thibodeau, good coaching that way. But like, look, they'd rather touchy-feely, nicer guys, more player-oriented. It'll be interesting because he put like everything out of JJ is like, I played, you didn't. So apparently he's an expert at dealing with NBA players because he played and he didn't. I told a GM friend of mine, when Danny Hurley was going to steal this job, with the Laker deal, I told him, I said, you should go up to him, pat him in the back and goes, hey, JJ, I've been in the front office and you haven't. You just got to deal with it and just like walk away from him, because obviously he hasn't experienced the circuits of the NBA. But like, it'll be interesting how he deals with guys that, he wants to get after. It's easy to get after guys in the media. Like when you're doing TV, when you're doing finals games and stuff like that, it's easy to get on, oh, they should be doing it this way. Yeah, I would have drawn it up this way. This is it. Like we all have that perfect thing. But then when you get into coaching and you got to really motivate these guys to do it, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with all these personalities. You got to deal with all this stuff. You got a media, a fan base, and all that. It'll just be interesting. But the Monty Williams thing is disastrous. It's an embarrassment. It's 80, and now it's your own money. I get it. So you gotta eat it, but you're literally paying, I think you're paying like 30 million. You're going to end up paying like 40 million a year for coaches for at least a year or two. Cause they got the former coach that was still getting paid, I think. Then you got Monty, and you're going to get the new coach who's probably going to be at 10, probably 8 to 10 because all this money's going up too. So with all the TV deal stuff. So Yeah, good luck to that, Bogues. That's going to be it. That's an embarrassment, though. You don't give a guy you know, it ain't the
They didn't need
NFL
to.
where
This
like
is the thing. They didn't need to. There was no one else really. You
No.
can't tell me there was anyone else in the market to offer him half of that.
yeah,
You know,
no, I agree.
when they did it.
Do you think Rondo adds
So
to the circus?
Yeah,
in LA?
Rondo is rumored to being the assistant coach of JJ, correct?
Yeah, another friend of Bron.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he'll be the head coach after a couple of years.
I mean, yeah, look, Ray John's great with film and watching film with guys and things. You know, he's got his own opinions of how things should go. You know, JJ's very strongly opinionated. And look, he's going to have Scotty Brooks is going to be one of his coaches. It's rumored that Dudley's going to be going with him. Cassell's going to be going with him. I've heard one of the guys that was in Dallas before who just got fired, who's in Phoenix now, he's going with him. What's his name? I forgot his name.
Can only
But
hire so
dude.
many. Yeah, I mean, let's just hope. Let's hope for our sake that D'Angelo Russell picks up his option. Let's hope that first and foremost. And Christian Wood is contracted next year. I just checked, so that's two fun ones that JJ's gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like I said, it's easy. Like even with us in a podcast, it's easy for us to talk about stuff. But imagine
The
like
day-to-day.
them getting hired by a team and have to deal with it.
The day to
You know,
day is a
same
different
thing.
story. It's a different story.
We're all fucking experts until we got. I mean, look, I've dealt with that, in having to like get players to do what you need them to do. I don't give a fuck if you're an NBA All-Star or not, you know, or never played. You're still in the same boat. Getting the guys to do what you need them to do, you know, it's going to be tough. It's because that roster isn't very good. They're not going to hit LeBron. I don't give a fuck if LeBron's shooting 9% from three. It's going to be someone else's fault, and they're going to blame you, and it's tough. And, you know, like I said, if it's something where they just said, hey, look, it's LeBron's last 2 years. You're going to be our guy through this rebuilding or whatever we're going to do past LeBron. But, you know, it's not going to be like that. You know, there's going to be, if this thing doesn't work, and they don't go to a conference final or they don't do whatever, it'll probably cost him his job. And I just don't think they're going to be good enough. I mean, at very best, what are they, Bogues? Like in the West, were they 6 in the 7?
Yeah, I think they're playing.
At very best,
they're playing at best. They're a 7. They're a home court playing team at best.
Yeah, if they play like the '86 Celtics, just still fucking like they're still 6 or 7. I just don't, you know, standings right now. Like, okay, so you got Denver, better. Oklahoma City, better. Minnesota, better. Clippers, you don't know with Paul George. Dallas, better. New Orleans is at least just as good. Suns, I don't know, maybe just as good if they stay healthy. Golden State,
Who knows? Yeah. Zach. Yeah, I mean, it's
Houston's even good. You know,
Houston will be
even
better.
decent.
Memphis, John Morant will be healthy. Sorry.
Memphis will be much better. So
not on house arrest, and then healthy.
Oh, jeez.
And then there was another take from Stephen A. Smith, bro. This whole thing, it was racism was involved. He's quoted as saying, numerous coaches, black coaches, called me expressing how they took issue with that podcast taking place. That was the podcast between LeBron James and JJ Redick, basically saying that LeBron went on a podcast with a white co-host to get his black head coach fired. Was the issue that the black coaches have had. This was reported by Stephen A. Smith not long ago, basically saying that LeBron James could have waited till after Darvin Ham was fired to go on that podcast, not during, and add gasoline to the flame. And yeah, pretty standard Stephen A. Smith take, pro, but just you can't get through that kind of stuff without race playing its way into it.
But Bogues, you know what it is with Stephen A? There's no consistency with him. Like, there's times where he's fair, and when people try to do the race thing, he goes, "They ain't race care. It's not the race card." And then there's times like, leave it the fuck alone, and then he just pushes the envelope with it. You know, it's just he's just weird, man. You just don't know. You don't know what to expect from him on a daily basis, where he's going to be. So with that stuff, it's pretty, you know,
all that
it's
aside,
dumb
bro.
shit.
All that aside, whose fucking idea is it to film him walking into fucking arenas? Have you seen that?
Oh,
shit?
no doubt about it. No.
Like we're like two old men, rambling, but it's like what the fuck? Like I see this shit on my social media. He's walking in like he's about to go and do layup lines. Like why?
Dude, the ego.
But it's so bad, man. Like ESPN.
But he makes like 20 million.
I get it. Well, go do your own.
He is like a
have
player.
your own PR people follow you. You shouldn't be on the. I want to watch a game. I'm not trying to see an announcer walking in, strutting in his whatever suit he just got fitted that morning. Like I just couldn't. And I thought it was a one-off. I started seeing it every game. They were posting it like,
oh no, dude, he was
Luka Doncic / Stephen A. Smith. It's just terrible. Yeah, they're just like, what are you doing? Like, who cares? But I thought that was interesting. All right, just a few stats, and then we'll move on. So most points, rebounds, assists in a playoffs since the merger, pro. Shaq with 4,854. LeBron with 4,853. Jordan, 4,775. Luka, 4,724. With less games, I believe. I'd have to check, but I believe this playoff / finals total games would be on the lower side out of those four players because they had a couple of 4-1 series. So, and then they obviously got swept. So throw another couple of games in there, he would easily be the leader of that all time, which is pretty impressive, bro.
Yeah, it is impressive. He did a lot of great things. He was healthy, played 70 games. Obviously, he was big time in the playoffs too, and that says something. But yeah, he's available, man. He plays, which is good. It's not, he's not going to the minimum of 62 just to get 62. And that's what happens when you put up 30 plus and, you play 70 games and then you rip it through the playoffs. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, should have been more in the MVP conversation, in my opinion. I thought if he was, I said at the start of the season that if he was healthy, I thought he would have won the MVP, and he was, but he should have been up there as well. He was talked about late, but I still think he had a really, really good season. All-time leader in finals 3-point percentage, pro. Who would you guess it to be?
I would say Steph, but I haven't studied it.
Al Horford.
Good for Al.
Al Horford. Minimum 20 attempts in the finals over your career. 56.1%, pro, in the finals.
Good for Al. Good for Al.
Yeah, good. I mean, he was an unbelievable player throughout his career. I battled him when I was in Milwaukee, and he was in Atlanta as their first round pick, and we had some good battles down there. And very, very good, talented player. Just continues to grind out years, and saying he's coming back for another year too, which is great. I think they'll keep him till the legs run out. In Boston, I think Udonis Haslem type role, even into his 40s, to keep him around if he wants to play on, because I think he's very, very useful. Seems like their grandfather there on that team with those young guys. So really, really cool. Moving on from there, NBL, not a whole lot of news. The Brisbane Bullets are moving back to the Entertainment Centre. Thank God for that. I think this is the best thing to happen to the Bullets in a long, long time. And I've been hard on their coaching debacle with the comments made about Sobey a little while ago, which got some pushback from from some people within the Bullets and the NBL. But I think it's a great move for them. They move into a bigger arena. Nissan Arena is in a horrendous spot, tough to get to. Netball arena, not great on TV. And the Entertainment Centre now gives them a bigger stadium to fill up. I think the capacity is 16,000, 17,000, I think, max. They won't be getting that for a while, but they've actually got the potential to grow, and that's what you want with NBL crowds soaring at an all-time high. You want to have arenas that can expand and get bigger and bigger. Good thing about places like Tasmania is, yes, they sell out a lot, but now they're sold out. They have no more seats to fill and make more money. The Entertainment Centre in Brisbane is good for that. It also has, I don't know if they're moving their facility there, but I believe there's an opportunity to move their facility there as well. There's some auxiliary courts connected to that facility, and I believe there's some offices available as well. So it would not surprise me if you see their whole club move there and base themselves out of there, which I think would be really good.
They announced also that they're building a facility in South Brisbane. Similar to what you guys did at Hoops Capital. It's going to have courts, player lounge, recovery, gym, everything in South Brisbane. And then they announced the move to the Entertainment Centre on the back of that. And
is the Entertainment Centre move, have they confirmed, are they moving the whole club there for now?
I'm not sure where they're.
I'm pretty sure they will, because I know there is some free offices there, and I know there is some courts. I think 4 or 5 YMCA courts there. So
Yeah,
they could
hold them
probably
over while the other one's
exactly,
being built.
yeah. So, but it's good to hear that, you know, they hopefully getting in on some of that Olympic funding and stadium infrastructure being built in Brisbane. So that's great there. And the other news we have in the NBL, the Boomers camp commences next week. Will start. So that 17-man roster will start in Melbourne. They play 2 games against China, then go off to Abu Dhabi for some games, and then head over to the Olympics. So I mean, a very interesting time in the Boomers program. Young guard versus old. I did my picks weeks ago. My way too early picks, which are now already wrong because Rocco was out of that 17 initially. I wanted him in the squad, but it's going to be interesting to see what direction Brian goes, even not just with selections, but style of play and way of play. Paddy, Joe, those guys have been really good and influential for the Boomers, but they're getting up there in age. Got these younger guys coming up, nipping at their heels. What style of play can Josh and Paddy play together defensively, ball usage-wise, which you spoke about? Will Joe find another role? Obviously, his legs are getting slower and slower as you get up there, like we all do, like I did, like Aaron Baines did, like everyone does towards the end of your career. So it'd be interesting to see if he can find a role in that team. Is there a young guy that potentially has a harsh cut and harsh miss out just because we can only fit 12 players? So there's a lot to go. I'm going to be down there in Melbourne, check out some of those training sessions and see how it all goes. But I'm excited to see I think we're pretty much going into that next generation of Boomers. That young guard is taking over. This will be the first tournament I really think we see them having an influential role on our success. I mean, a lot of the veterans have moved on, retired, and on their last legs, whereas the young guys are going to have to really start to carry the load and build for not only this campaign, but 28 and 32 and so on, and keep that Boomers program in good stead. That's about it in Australia, I think. Pro, you got any fact or fake news for us?
Oh, no, hell no. It's our last session for a while, so I'm good.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break for a while on the basketball stuff. We'll hopefully get something out maybe next month sometime with the free agency stuff. But other than that, we appreciate all the support. It's been a great year basketball-wise, both NBL, NBA, and now we're in the doldrums of no basketball for 3 months, Pro. So hold on tight, enjoy your trip in Greece, and we'll see everyone soon.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Adios.